Hey, good day, good day, good day. Welcome to RESWealthy Talk with Mercedes
Brian Erhahon here, signing in.
signing in. Happy 2026, y'all. So, today we are going to be discussing the 2026 forecast. So, Brian, a question that we continue to see and have is, are mortgage rates going to stay at 6%?
Well, 6% is where they're at now. Yet we just, at the end of the day, it's a lot about what's going on, and a bunch of different factors, right? I mean, I think it's geopolitical these days. Obviously, it's economic. What's going on in the economy? What are what are all those things happening? I think that's the most important thing to consider right now.
So, what you're telling me is we're not seeing 3% anytime soon. Because that's the question I think that we're getting a lot of.
No. There's no way. There's no way that we're seeing like it would. You'd have to think about it, right? In order for us to get to 3%, like let's even move backwards. I remember when I got into the industry. This was the 2007. I was doing lending then, and I remember refinancing. Like at one of my first transactions at that time, there was a gentleman who had like a 13% interest rate. Again, 2007, he had a 13%
Wow.
interest rate,
Wow.
and then we got him a 6.5, and dude was ecstatic. Right? He was happy.
So, what you're telling me is we're spoiled.
Oh, for sure. Right. So that was he was joyous. Right.
Wow.
So then that's 07, and then like 6 8 months later, market crash, and so we needed a global meltdown in order for us to get into. At that time, it went down to about 4.5 to 5%, and it kind of stayed around 4.5 to 5% for a minute, for a while, and then what else had to happen? So then COVID hit. So you figure, so so global meltdown, and then global pandemic,
literally,
right? And then they did everything that they could to bring rates down. And so you got to factor, for rates to come down again, you got to think about, okay, what catastrophe is up next?
And we don't need another.
Right? We don't need that.
We literally don't need
So
another.
so you got to, sometimes it's like, okay, well, we had a once in 100 year event with COVID, and then once every 2 to 3 decade event in the global recession. But that was actually like almost once in a 100 years, because that there was a lot of bank failures that had to happen, and also mortgage meltdown in order for that to happen. So you figure all of that had to happen in order for us to get to where we are today. So right now we're actually at normal capacity for interest rates. Now, we have a an idea what folks are saying as far as a forecast where rates will be, and here's where they are. Right, folks are saying, so like Wells Fargo is forecasting, that will be around 6.25. You've got our MBA forecast, Mortgage Bankers Association, forecasting that 6.4%, and then you've got uh, Fannie Mae, who's saying 5.9% is where we should see rates by Q4 2026. So,
wow. Q4.
Yeah, Q4.
So we're not going to see a dip until.
We just, there's just so many different factors that have to happen. That's all in a normal situation. Now, what's normal is, what's not normal is our acting president firing the Fed chair for the sole purpose of having control to be able to push rates down. That's not normal, right? And in a normal environment, we have the Fed chair working independent of the presidents and all of those folks, and just setting it with no outside influence, or that we know of. We have public environments right now, or very public dialogues and conversations for this administration, saying there's an obvious goal or interest to push rates down to the benefit of, by the way, it's not even just the benefit of homeowners, it's to the benefit of the government, because they're paying money, that debt that's overhanging $30 trillion or whatever of money that they're paying on, to pay that debt back, and they're at rates that they don't want to be at. So they want to push rates down so that way their not mortgage, their debt payments or payback payments are lower. They're paying a lot more than they want to.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
So they're like, all right, well, that's why there's so much pressure right now for rates to come down. So it's just one of those things that, we have an idea, but then we have no idea.
Yeah, I can see that. So, with that being said, I mean, do you think where rates are, currently standing, what happens with price stabilization right now?
Well, you have a lot of different conversations with where prices are headed. So, where folks think prices are like, there's a whole bunch of different conversations. So you have NAR, National Association of Realtors, saying that we should see 4% appreciation, which is about average. It's about standard. It's a safe bet. Wells Fargo is saying 3.5. So the average, by the way, of all of these folks are saying it's a 1.6%.
So, like 1 to 3 on the high side,
On
1 to 3%.
1%, so 1 to 2% on the average. High side, so NER is the most optimistic right now at 4%,
Okay.
right? And then the most pessimistic is the Mortgage Bankers Association saying negative 0.3%
So,
price growth
to
in
me, this
2026.
reflects more stabilization than a broad market correction.
More stabilization. I think it's balancing out for sure. Market correction, in some now this is all relative based off of you're thinking about buying, you're thinking about selling. It's all relative to your price point. It's all relative
True.
to your metro area where you live, and so where you're selling and buying. So that's the general. So not everything impacts you nationally, and
True.
so right at the local
Depending
level.
on, yeah, where your
So those
market
are
is.
all things that we need to keep in. Like you could say, oh my gosh, now well, home price. 'Cause I think last year when we looked at it, prices in a certain amount of metro markets were down, and they've been down since 20, mid 22 to end of 22 to about right around now. When you look at markets like Austin, and certain other markets out there, they've come down over the last couple years. So by double digits. But here in Southern California, we haven't really experienced
where our home values are holding.
right. And so
When
by
they're
right, exactly. And by the way, again, the caveat is it depends on the price point. Higher end, mid, and then starter, right? Condo townhomes, and then you've got your mid entry single family, and then you've got your luxury higher end. Those are all different aspects of the market.
I just think truly, overall, as a whole, I'm in alignment with it depends on the city, of course, the county, and price point. But all in all, what that tells us is sellers really need to be pricing strategically.
Right.
I mean, the the multitude of different pricing strategies we're seeing on, for new listings, it's all over the place because I still think that people have a mindset of COVID times.
Mhm.
I can price wherever and I'm going to get 30, 40, 50 offers a line out of the door. And so really honing in on what we're looking at for 2026 is going to be pivotal for buyers, sellers, and investors to know what the year is going to unfold for them.
Yeah, and so the thing that you're hearing from us is you got to be educated. You got to look at your numbers. You got to study your personal economy. And at the end of the day, we make our own economy for the most part, right? And so, how is your own economic situation personally? Because the unfortunate thing is that when we have issues geopolitically, and when we have issues in the market, that creates the best opportunities at times to purchase and
Yeah.
make a move. And so, unless you're personally ready to move despite a COVID, to move despite a great recession, because here's the thing, you know, ignorance is said to be bliss.
Mhm.
So when you look at '08, '09, 10, when people were saying, "Oh, it's a terrible time to buy," yada yada yada, I was helping one of my first clients in 2010 in real estate buy their home, my first set of clients, and everybody knows now that hey, if we were to buy more real estate, 2008, 9, 10 would probably would have been the best time to do it, right?
Don't remind me.
Right. So, but the thing is to think about is that what happened then? People were like,
Yeah.
everyone was, what does Warren Buffett say? He says, when everybody is greedy, be fearful, and when everyone is fearful, be greedy. And so in that same situation right now, it's when there's a little trepidation in the market, you start to think, okay, well, can I afford to make the move? If so, let's go for it, because that's where you start having those opportunities as in a buyer's market to buy.
So with that being said, are we seeing inventory growth, like present but limited? What do you think? Like listed inventory, they're saying is higher than a year ago.
Oh yeah, I mean, inventory has been trending up, not by a ton. However, it is higher year over year. So part of the reason why we see, price change and economic slowdowns or whatnot in certain situations is that the supply changing. And because of supply changing, when you look at even this chart right here, you see the cooling of the certain markets out there and some of these national averages. And you're looking at, okay, where's Texas? Where's California? This is year over year Q3 2025, right? We haven't gotten the final Q4 numbers yet. That's coming. However, national average in terms of growth for 2025 and year over year Q3 was 2%, right? And so you have some of these heavier states who's kind of created some lag here. However, there are other states that have grown. So when we look at price growth or price depreciation, that's usually comes from how much more inventory is on the market. Are days on market up, and why? Well,
Yeah.
days on market, being up are usually as a result of affordability. Can people afford the current prices of that sellers are asking? And if they can't, then they think twice and they'll just say, you know what, let me. We actually had a situation. We were talking to a client yesterday. They made an offer on the property. Sellers, is getting, in our opinion, maybe a little greedy, filling themselves. And so they were like, well, instead of me just saying I'm going to just jump in on it, let's just go out and keep looking and look at another home, and let's compare before we go back and see if we really want to take this house.
Bump yourself up, and that in itself is showing the shift in the market to me. So, I mean, to wrap up the inventory, I mean, it sounds like inventory has improved, right? But the market remains still structurally undersupplied, I think, for the traditional family homes, which kind of keeps competitive pressure in place. However, it is lightening up, which now to me is the conversation about affordability and that gap in between that we're seeing, Brian.
Yeah, even when you look at some of these charts here, yeah, inventory is expected to rise, in 2026, and so the continued challenge of last year continuing going into this year is what happens with inventory. So days on market continue to go up, and so now, by the way, just because inventory rises doesn't always mean that prices is falling. It depends on how much. Because here's the general thought: our population has continued to grow, and we still have a whole generation of millennials who haven't even purchased yet. Right now, the average first-time home buyer is, I think, in their 50s right now, or like the median age of first-time home buyers, they're in their 50s right now. So, what's the average millennial right now? They're just entering 40 years old, if that. So the average millennial isn't even a homeowner yet, and that's the next largest generation, if not the largest generation, than baby boomers.
However, I mean, I think millennials, I think we talked about this on a previous episode, but they're seeing the past mistakes from others.
For sure.
So they're wanting to jump in before, housing costs just gets away from them. I mean, housing costs now can take up to 45% of a person's income at the end of the day.
Which is some of the highest on record.
Yeah.
And so here's what folks are doing though. They're being more strategic about their purchases. And so the way that they're doing that is either we've got a bunch of clients who bought with their siblings. We've got clients who have bought with their parents. We've got clients who have bought, with obviously a spouse. You've got clients who are, being a bit more, sensitive to, instead of me going for the big single family, let me go with a condo townhome starter or multifamily.
The start to forever.
You're right, the start to forever. So there's so many different options there, so instead of folks counting themselves out and saying, okay, I can't do it. They're thinking, okay, strategically, how can I do it?
Ooh,
And so that's one of the things that make it important where you have folks like us is, okay, if you want to be strategic, we can be strategic. And
all day.
let's figure this out. Also mortgage options. There's ways for you if you buy the right home at the right time with the right costs and credits aligning, you could get your seller to buy your interest rate down to make the home more affordable. You've got things such as 3-2-1 buy downs. So meaning that, it's going to be, for the first year, it's this rate and it's the lowest rate possible. Right. And so certain people are getting 2.9s or whatnot on those first years. And then it goes up to maybe 3.9 the second year and then 4.9 the third year, and then it locks in after that at 4.9 or 5, whatever it ends up being. It depends on again your money down, the cost to close, all these things that end up being a part of that. However, there are options out there for you to get in, and then as rates continue, we see the forecast as rates continue to taper down, then you lock yourself into you refi and then you lock yourself into a mortgage where you're more comfortable. But at the end of the day, though, we always say make sure you're comfortable now.
Yeah.
And
So that
worst case scenario, if you can't refi, can you still take care of that payment?
Yeah, comfortable with that. And so just even that little part, I'm hearing you say, and I don't want people to think we're repeating ourselves, however, it is really important that buyers are understanding the behavior of the market right now and they're adapting to it. Really, truly realizing, okay, I don't want to get left behind. What is it that I need to do besides, hiring the right team? Is what do I need to do in order to afford this home in this moment and not wait for, XYZ? And what that looks like, you mentioned on the lending side, the rate buy down, as well as how are we negotiating for our clients to make sure it's a win-win for them. And that's looking at days on market. That is seller credits that we're seeing. Like a lot of sellers have been really open to giving credits right now and making a win-win, for everyone. Closing costs, using those closing costs from the seller to be able to buy the rates down. So it's really truly just being strategic, being mindful. And I still think there, on both sides, buyers and sellers who aren't willing to make those compromises. But I'm starting to get the feeling that both sides are like, things have shifted. And in order for me to sell this house and in order for a buyer to buy it, we have to work cohesively.
Yeah.
And I think if we really truly took that mindset, honestly, through this year and the coming, we'd have a lot more opportunities for people in this market.
It's not a can I, it's a
how can I? Yeah. Ooh.
And that's going to be something that makes the difference for how somebody can get into the home that they're looking for. And that's important, and we obviously want to be able to support that education process. And let me go back to the soapbox that we stand on pretty regularly is make sure that they're educating. Now, as a home buyer, and if you're going to be making your largest investment ever, please make sure hold your agent to a standard that they've sat down with you in person or virtual, and they've gone through a playbook on how they help their clients be successful. Gone are the days of agents just saying, "Oh, you want to see this house? All right, let's get in the car and let's go." Please, no. Because now what happens is you're going to have to learn on the go. And a lot of times it can be, the pace can be too fast to where you are trying to keep up. And now, depending on that person, either they know what they're doing or they know what they're not doing. They're pulling you with them instead of guiding you alongside. That's a completely different model. So for us, every single time that we have a conversation with our buyer or a seller, even an investor, we always want to know how much do you know? How much are you following along with the markets? And then let's fill in the gaps accordingly. If you don't know much, perfect. We have a whole process for what we can do to get you up to speed with the need to know, and then go from there. And then obviously any questions you have, we'll fill in those blanks as well. And then we're going to reiterate everything that we said at that meeting throughout the rest of the process. But we have to give you a foundation first. Why in the world would you buy a home with no foundation? You don't do it. It doesn't make any sense. It's the same thing because you might be getting over your head. And
Yeah.
you might, and now here's the thing, bad agents don't speak for all agents. Bad agents certainly don't speak for her or I. So at the end of the day, don't judge the industry based off of somebody
Bad
who was
experience.
not a practitioner, because that doesn't carry themselves as a professional. You know, like I said this on one of our other episodes, there are bad attorneys, there are terrible attorneys, there are terrible doctors. That's why the whole concept of malpractice is the whole thing.
Unfortunately.
Right. Unfortunately. And so because of that, you know, but you don't throw the whole baby with the bathwater out and say, "Oh, all doctors suck."
Baby with the bathwater.
Right? You don't say that. You don't say that, "Oh my goodness, you know, all these doctors suck." I'd hope not. I'm ranted Brian right now. All right.
Ranted Brian.
No, I'm agitated, Brian.
I know it is
I'm a
frustrating.
little agitated.
I mean, we have a client right now that it was like pulling teeth to get them to trust us, and why? Because they had a really, really bad experience from, agents taking them to see properties that they had no interest in, from being the completely opposite side of the county of where they wanted to be, the city that they wanted to be from, down to the style of home that they wanted to be in. So when they got introduced to us, I mean, it was like we were putting on the boxing gloves to just duke it out for them to like, love, and trust us. And so, we overcame that obstacle of their bad experience. And, I'm looking forward to being able to serve them at a high level.
Yeah.
And, Brian mentioned a point too about real estate agents moving too quickly. And I think one of the things, there's a lot that comes to buying a property, right? Especially here in California, where I believe it was 2019, where all new construction, you had to have solar panels, right? So if you have a buyer who's already on the cusp of approval and maybe DTI tight, or they just personally want to stay within a certain budget, I'm not going out to show them a house that has solar prior to having a conversation with that lender and sharing that solar contract. What does it look like for our client? They want to see this house, they love it. What does it look like for them to purchase this solar outright, financing, or taking over the current lease and now having an additional payment? The last thing that you want to do is have your client fall in love with a house, write an offer, get it accepted, and then when we go into underwriting, finding out that they don't qualify for this house with the solar. Why didn't you tell me that there was solar on this property? I mean, it really sounds like minute. Why? You would think that more people think that way, but most agents do not.
It happens all too often.
You'll even see online when you're looking at, just came back on the market. You call the agent, hey, what's going on with the house? Oh yeah, we were in escrow, but the buyer didn't qualify for solar. What? Why is it that you were all the way knee deep in this escrow before you realized if your client could afford solar? Or something as simple as HOA. I really, really, really wish real estate agents stop underwriting files. If you're not a full-time lender, you do not have the authority to underwrite a file for your client.
You do not have the authority
at all. Why are we not? And now I feel like now I'm ranty, Mercedes. I just went in. However, same thing with HOA. Hey, client likes this offer. I'm sorry, client likes this property. HOA is this amount. I know that they want to be around this payment with this. What does it look like if they add? What purchase price do we need to be at to accommodate this HOA price, right? Mm-hmm. And when you see the numbers, sometimes it actually doesn't work. So then now we're able to be strategic on, okay, we know if HOA is within, $200 to $300, here's where their price point needs to be. We're getting ahead of the game, because the last thing you also want is a disappointed client, right? Where they fall in love with the house, you write an offer, you get it accepted, and the next thing you know, you're talking, oh, well, your payment's either going up XYZ, or you just actually don't qualify anymore with an HOA. So I think now he's looking at me. I think my rant is over, and yet I think it's really important to be focused on ways to make this work in 2026, and that's being forefront, as always, educated. So.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of go back to some, something that we talked about earlier that is super important. We get the conversations, oh, is the market going to crash? Market going to crash? With the market, any market, whether it be houses, cars. Remember during COVID, folks, minivans were actually in demand, because of the supply chain issue. So folks actually were getting, minivans were more valued. I don't know if you remember that, but I remember that. And I remember that, and there was a time where minivans were actually seemed to like there was a premium on minivans because they weren't being brought in or made or whatever the case is because of the supply chain issue. Same thing here. There's a supply chain issue with housing, and when you look at the lack of building, we're actually trending right now for a lower year of purchases. I'm sorry, of new construction than we had last year and the year before that. And we've always kind of had or been behind as a country since the 80s or 90s in terms of building to the demand of the new population or the growing population.
And I think in California,
it's also been an issue. It's been a major issue in California.
Issue.
So you see here, right? This is something to know. It's like, right, market remains undersupplied, right? New housing units started, right, and these are in the thousands. And yet you look since the 90s, we've just been undersupplied. We're not making enough homes for the amount of people looking to purchase, and that's why you have that constraint in available homes, which creates the opportunity for us to be able to say that it creates the opportunity for us to be able to say that we just don't know that prices are going to be falling when we know that there's a underlying issue with available housing.
Yeah,
there's not enough housing, period. So therefore, there's always going to be there's a underlying locked in value for housing because of that.
And how I know it's not going to the latter is we're seeing cities that didn't have much growth before really hitting a boom. And like off the top of my head, I think about, cities like San Jacinto, cities like Beaumont, Banning, where Brian grew up, Palmdale, Lancaster, right? We're also seeing cities like Apple Valley, Victorville. These were cities that Californians were, it was kind of, we'll keep it more inland. But now the way that the pricing is going, we're starting to see a big boom in these, I would say, more outskirts cities, which are now being developed because just the shortage of inventory in California, you have no choice but to develop some of these areas.
Right. Right, very true.
So, are you ready for the hot topic?
All right, we've been soapboxing and ranting.
Soapboxing and ranting. I mean, y'all have all been hearing it. So the hot topic everywhere is what Trump just said recently, which he is proposing a ban on large institutional investors from buying single-family homes.
That's interesting.
That is the hot topic. So, I mean, what are your thoughts, Brian? It's getting a lot of attention, and people, they feel like they might not mess with him fully, but they're feeling like I might mess with this change.
Well, I think there's a couple different things on this. Is what's considered to be a large or institutional buyer. Because there's a lot of investors out there. Because at the end of the day, it's investors, right? They're working to put a cap on the amount of purchases some of these investors are making. Now, you look at the size of these institutional buyers. You're talking Wall Street money. You're talking venture capital money. Some context, I remember in 2012, 13, right after, I think maybe it was Obama, that did a home buyer tax credit. And I can remember that was a turning point for the market because, we were in that lull, 2009, 10, 11 was kind of funky. And then midway through 12, when Obama was like, all right, we're going to give first time home buyers a tax credit for purchases, then that is like a flip switched, right? And then folks just came out the woodworks working to buy. And then that started the craze of purchases. And what I remember then is that there were a lot of investors coming out, institutional buyers bidding and bidding and making it hard. I remember there was one of my clients, not gonna say the name, let me say it, but he and his partner at that time were buying, and they were a first time home buyer. It took us 2 years.
Wow.
It took us almost 2 years for us to get him a home. We probably started at like 2000, end of 2011. Didn't get them into something until beginning of 2013, and we made a lot of offers, changed the criteria quite a bit, and we just worked our butt off. I worked my butt off to get them into something, and we had to make some adjustments, make some sacrifices, and yeah, it was just a ton of work. And this was, if you remember, this is Orange County in Fullerton. Just great city, great location. Buying a single family residence for 300, 315 at that time.
Wow.
We helped them sell for, I think they ended up selling for like 750 3 years ago. So that was 2012. 10 years later, roughly, they end up getting 2x, 3x on their money, 2.2x on their money, right? So, but then it just took. I mean, the amount of offers we had to write. So my point in bringing that up is that uh, since back then, a lot of these institutional buyers have been buying quietly, because here's the reason why they've been buying. A lot of that money in Wall Street, a lot of that money in 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 venture capital, it's very volatile, especially Wall Street, right? The up and down of the stock market and whatnot. So a lot of these companies are seeing real estate as just a more stable investment and a guaranteed ROI because of rents going up, and it's a very indirect. Was it? Uh, you have State Street, BlackRock, a lot of these huge companies coming in and buying these homes up to balance out their portfolios. And it's just another part of their, they got stock, they got all these different things. Why not own housing? And so they actually indirectly manipulate the market by, when they take off a certain amount of homes off the market, they're actually compressing and forcing rents up, because when you take a certain amount of single family homes at that scale off the market and they're never available for sale again, then that means there's less people working to buy. There's more people bidding on fewer homes, and then those homes being for sale, and that means there's also a certain amount of homes that are available for rent. And then now you have rents also going up too. So it's just a way for them to manipulate the market at that scale. And I think finally, an administration is doing something about it to better help folks, the everyday buyer, to buy and own. And because here's the thing, when you own a home, it locks in your lifestyle. I've heard this very early on in the career. It's like when you own your home, it's a way for you to set your lifestyle, meaning where you live, where you can live, where your kids can go to school, where you can shop, where you can build community, where you can hang out, all these things that sets your life in a particular way. And the only person that can change your cost of living as far as your house goes is you, based off refinancing. So if you never refi, what happens to your payment? You knock it out. Or you refi strategically to get the payment down. Go from a 30-year mortgage to strategically a 15-year, and then you're knocking that down even more. And so there's just these things that you can do to make sure that, because you think about it, what's the largest expenses that we have? It's taxes and then housing. And so taxes, that's
Oh, that's an episode.
right. But again, housing, when you get your housing locked in, we have folks right now. We're in Eastvale. I don't know of another great city in SoCal that has been a very great example of this. Eastvale is probably a hidden gem in the Inland Empire, where you can go and you can, in the past, in 2000, 3, 4, 5, when these homes were being built, Esau has one of the highest percentages of large homes per unit compared to anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
So meaning that, you know, you'll find very rare if it's a 1,500, 1,600 square foot home, it's probably like a townhome or condo. But most of the homes are like 2,500 square feet and up, right? And so that there's one of the big homes. There's a lot of people who came in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 who just bought, you know, for, you know, I saw a guy, I'm talking to a guy right now who bought a home, a 4,000 square foot home in Eastvale for $400,000 in 2012.
That's what that house is going for now.
We're talking 1.1 now.
Mind blown.
You know, and so where else can you go where you can get a 4,000? You find a 4,000 square foot house in LA, and let's call it, you know, View Park, Windsor Hills, or any of those areas.
Oh my God.
You're talking, you know, 2.5, 3 million.
Yeah.
You know, so you know those are some of the affordability challenges that we're coming across. So all that to say,
I mean, so in essence, what the administration is proposing, I mean, still with the supply shortage, I mean, are we saying that between the supply shortage and the number of homes being bought by these quote unquote large institutions, I mean, a nationwide ban alone, we're not expected to see a crazy change in the market.
No, I don't think so.
Like, I think people, when they're hearing it, they assume automatically all of this supply is going to hit the market, which is going to lower prices. And I think understanding the true balance of what the percentages of these quote unquote large investors are buying, we still have a housing shortage. So it's not like they're going to just start throwing these houses onto the market for sale.
Mm-hmm.
I do not see that big of a shift. And if there is any impact, I think it's going to be based per region.
Yeah, and I think that's accurate, you know. And so I guess some of the question is if they can't buy anymore because their distinct mission is to rent. So, and by the way, like their rentals, you know, there's a certain criteria for how they rent out and who they rent to, and so not to say that they're like renting to, you know, people who to help them like an idea about, hey, we got to make it affordable to rent.
Yeah,
that's not their mission. Their mission is like, okay, I gotta you know make sure I maximize the rent. So, you know, if anything, if they stop buying, I would wonder what that does to the rental market. Not only just if they stop buying, yes, sure, they open up more opportunities, but it's not going to be very much though, because I think the percentage of across the country that they own in terms of the units or the homes out there, available homes, I think it's like low double digits, 10%, 11%, like high single digits to low double digits. So 8 to 10, 12% of all the available homes in the country they own. Versus now, that's just large scale. That's not mom and pop institutional.
Right.
That's not, you know, auntie, uncle, or you who've been buying 1, 2, 3, 4 homes for your own investment portfolio.
So I also think when you brought up, you know, rents too, a lot of these investors participate in the build to rent strategies, right? Truly just building to, you know, rent out single family homes. So I think that might be the shift that we feel at some point is if they're not coming in and building new construction strictly to rent out, I think those are the handcuffs that we'll see and feel being aimed towards rental supply growth. I think it'll slow that down.
Well, you know, that's one thing, and you make a good point. Like, I feel like now, by the way, I said a number. Some of the numbers, the high single digits to low double digits, those are in certain markets, right?
Mm-hmm.
In certain markets, it's not a blend across the country because if you look at it with like their total ownership rate across the whole entire country, it's like low single, like 3 to 4% of all, right? So, but the idea is that you know, when you look at what they should be doing, they should be building, right? Take that money and partner with you know, Lennar, partner with DR Horton, Forte Homes, whatever, and they should be building to sell and but that for them that's a bit too risky. but they can also build to rent too. So instead of buying what's already created, they might be. I know BlackRock is invested in certain, but more of the smaller or mid-level institutional investors or home buyers, they should also be building to rent and also building to sell. That's just my take, my thought. But
Yeah.
you know,
So what we're telling the people is relax.
it's not gonna change
It
much.
sounds good.
Sounds good, but it's not gonna change.
It's not going to change
It's not gonna
much
change much.
at all.
Not at all. Not at all. Not and again, it's one of those things where we create our own economy. Right. Let's focus on our finances. Let's focus on what we can
What we
afford.
can and what we can do.
Let's focus on where we want to live, and let's just go and focus on what we can control. We can't control these are all proposals. The man in office has also said something about how talking about portable mortgages. I know that was a whole thing that's brought up. Like that was a thought. They didn't come back up yet.
No, and
50-year mortgages.
that got quiet.
That was so I know they still got to work on the back end and see if it's if it's even a thought. But I think a lot of this administration thinks out loud.
Yes,
A
here's
lot of
a
it,
thought. I'm
let's not-
gonna put it out, but no, not have direction.
Yeah.
Behind it.
Let's not overreact to
let's
what
not
this
get
administration is doing.
into the hysteria.
A little bit of hysteria.
Let's focus on the now, right?
Focus on right now. Focus on what we can control. Focus on, there's three pillars to your ability to finance a home. It's your credit, it's your down payment, and then it's your debt to income ratio, right? So your credit, your down payment, and then your debt to income ratio. Obviously, credit sweet spot. There's we've talked about this on previous episodes. You can buy as low as 580, 550. There's really no bottom number. It's just depending on the lender and the lender overlays what the specific lender is willing to take on as far as risk. So that's the credit side, right? So you can get into a home as low as 620. Anything lower, you got to have compensating factors, either more down or just a really good debt to income ratio. So then the other side is your credit and then your income. All right. So how's your money? I'm sorry, your down payment. How are you doing with your down payment? Do you have any 401k money that you could put down? We got a client right now buying a home with his 401k. You can totally do that. Retirement accounts. Do you have gift funds? Do you have a rich uncle, rich parent that's out there saying, "Hey, look, I got this extra cash who can help you with the down payment?" The third part is, okay, how is your revolving situation, your debt to income ratio? Do you have more debt than you can afford on paper based off of what the lender is willing to give you? And that's the most important part. And we'll probably do another conversation in the future about really how to impact your debt to income ratio. Maybe even just have a conversation about the course that we do, DTI Secrets Unlocked.
Let's do it.
Right, because DTI Secrets Unlocked is available in RESWealthy University. For those of you who want to go to RESWealthy.com and check that out. Right now, it's at no cost, for free. All you gotta do is put in your information. And
free 99? Did you say free 99?
For now. At a later date, it may cost, but at the end of the day, we're here to help. And so get it while I don't say while supplies last, but while the mood is good. While the mood is good, go check out DTI Secrets Unlocked at RESWealthyUniversity.com. Get access to that, and then and just really get the blueprint on how to manipulate your own personal financial situation for the best and for the betterment of your upcoming housing purchase. So with that being said, 2026, if we're going to wrap up what the idea is, I think we'll see a little bit more inventory on the market, probably not by much, but just a little bit more balancing out of a market in the buyer's favor. Now, this depends on the amount, depends on where you're buying, your price point, location, all the above. However, it also, I feel, depends on where rates go. If rates go sub 5.9, we're kind of almost in that ballpark now. Yet if rates go below 5.5, I think you start to see a lot of the inventory start to shrink up a little bit because people have been waiting. There's been a survey out that says, what will be an acceptable rate for you to make your move? A A lot of people have been, quoting 5.5 have been their sweet
number to
spot.
get
If they
off
can
it.
get somewhere in the mid to low fives, they jump off the fence.
Yeah.
So if you can afford right now
Just take it in a market
the
now.
home that you're looking for, jump in so that way you can ride the wave when rates come down, and you can actually use that to your benefit and gain some appreciation
Yeah.
in
That's
that
what I was gonna
process.
say. Yep.
So with that being said, Mercedes,
With that
anything else?
being said, we truly just wish y'all a blessed 2026. We're here and happy to help.
Here and happy to help. Y'all be well. Have a great rest of your day. And when in doubt, subscribe, and share this with somebody that you know could use some just candid dialogue, candid information about the process of buying, selling, investing in real estate, and also mortgage financing.